The billionaire baby cried 4 consecutive hours on first-class flight to New York, and every scream of Emma Blackstone pierced passenger eardrums like a deafening siren. Richard Blackstone, CEO of Black Tech Industries, held his 8-month-old daughter with the despair of a man used to controlling empires, but completely lost before an inconsolable child. "For God's sake, do something," he hissed Margaret Sterling, a socialite sitting on armchair 2A, typing furiously on his cell phone. "Some of us pay $15,000 for this passage to have peace, not to hear this infernal noise." The flight attendant approached for the third time with a forced smile. "Mr. Blackstone, we may be able to transfer it to the executive class where there is more space for—" "I don't move from here," cut Richard, sweat running down his forehead. His company was negotiating a $8 billion merger, and he needed to reach New York for the most important meeting of his career. The nanny had canceled at the last minute, forcing him to travel alone with Emma. Harold Morrison, a septuagenarian businessman known for his donations to social causes, looked over his gold glasses. "In my times, parents knew how to educate their children properly. This generation has no preparation or discipline." Victoria Kingston, heiress of a textile fortune, whispered loudly to her assistant, "When you have money but there is no class, that's the result. Anyone can buy a first-class ticket today." It was then that something unexpected happened. A soft, melodious voice rose from the economy class seats, singing a Tagalog song that no one could identify, but that penetrated chaos as a magical balm. Emma stopped crying instantly, her eyes turning toward that mysterious melody. Everyone turned to see a young 16-year-old man walking down the corridor with firm and determined steps. Maya Santos had only a simple backpack and carried the silent confidence of those who know secrets that the powerful would never learn. "Excuse me," said Maya, addressing Richard directly without even looking at the other passengers, who watched her with poor disguised contempt. "Can I help with your daughter?" Margaret Sterling released a sharp laugh that echoed through the cabin. "Oh, how adorable. The cleaning employee wants to play nanny." She looked around, seeking support from other first-class passengers. "Honey, go back to your place before we call security. People like you don't belong here." Victoria joined the chorus of humiliation. "Seriously, that audacity. First they invade our neighborhoods, now they want to guess how to raise our children. Where are the commissioners when we need it?" Maya completely ignored the insults, keeping her eyes fixed in Richard with a serenity that only people who survived the worst storms can keep up. "Sir, I grew up taking care of 7 minor brothers in Manila. I recognize the signs of colic for reflux when I see. Your daughter is not just crying, she is in real discomfort, and I know exactly how to help her." Richard hesitated for a moment, looking between the young woman determined in front of her and the hostile faces of the passengers around. Emma had begun to cry again, but something in Maya's calm presence kept her less agitated, as if recognized genuine maternal force. Harold Morrison leaned forward with indignant expression. "Richard, you can't be considering seriously leaving that person touching your daughter. As far as we know, they can have diseases, viruses, who knows what kind of dirt carries." "What would you do?" Richard asked, desperation clara in his voice, ignoring the derogatory whispers around. Without asking formal permission, Maya reached out with the naturalness of those born to take care. "I can try a specific technique that I learned from my great-grandmother, who was a midwife in the Philippines. It's an old wisdom that works when modern medicine fails." Margaret Sterling stood abruptly, his red face of indignation. "This is absolutely ridiculous. Are you really going to let this invader touch your daughter? Richard, think about your reputation. Think about what people will say." The silence that followed was broken only by Emma's soft sob. Maya remained immobile, waiting for Richard's decision, while her eyes revealed a serenity that only exists in those who have faced much worse storms and kept powerful secrets about justice and revenge. "Please," Richard whispered, extending Emma towards Maya, feeling that she had nothing more to lose. What happened in the following minutes challenged all logic and broke all the social barriers of that elitist environment. Maya held Emma in an ESP position Pacific, applying soft pressure at precise points as he muttered an ancient Philippine Lulan song that his great-grandmother had taught. The crying ceased completely, replaced by gangs of contentment and a peace that no expensive expert had been able to provide. "How the hell did you do this?" Richard asked, watching his daughter for the first time in hours with a genuinely peaceful expression, as if Maya had operated a miracle before all. "My great-grandmother was a midwife in the Philippines during the Japanese occupation," Maya explained simply, continuing the soft movements that kept Emma calm. "She taught me that babies sometimes need to feel the specific heart rate combined with pressure at ancestral tension points. It's a technique transmitted by 5 generations of strong women." Margaret Sterling watched in silence, clearly disturbed by the fact that an economy teenager had instantly achieved what none of Richard's expensive experts had achieved in months of consultations. Victoria Kingston whispered furiously with her assistant, "That's luck, nothing more. Any idiot can calm a baby for a few minutes. Let's see if she can keep it." But Maya was not anyone, and Emma remained completely relaxed in her arms, as if she had finally found the right person to understand her needs. There, in the face of all the eyes of contempt and unbelief, Maya remained firm as those who keep a secret too powerful to reveal before the right time, a secret about origins, hidden talents, and a family that these privileged people could never imagine. If this story of prejudice and overcoming has touched your heart, be sure to subscribe to the channel to find out how a simple moment of humiliation would become the most unexpected turnaround that this first class never witnessed. In the days following the flight, Maya found that her life had become a completely unexpected nightmare. Richard Blackstone had offered to pay for his university studies in recognition for help with Emma, but what should have been a blessing quickly turned into something much more sinister. "Do you really believe this girl deserves a spot on Harvard?" Margaret Sterling asked on the phone with Richard, his voice echoing along the vivos at the Black Tech Industries office. "Dear, I know respectable families who have paid fortunes for generations to ensure that their children have access to elite institutions. And now you want to give it free for for someone like that?" Richard hesitated for a moment, looking through the panoramic window of his office on the 40th floor. "Margaret, the girl is brilliant. He speaks 4 languages, has perfect notes, and has shown exceptional maturity." Maturity? Victoria Kingston had joined the call, her cutting laugh echoing through the office. "Richard, dear, you were manipulated by a smart teenager who knew exactly how to impress a desperate man. These people learn early as taking advantage of the generosity of others." Meanwhile, in the small apartment Maya shared with 5 cousins in Queens, she received a call that would change everything. The voice on the other side was cold, calculated, and absolutely terrifying. "Maya Santos, here is Detective Harrison from the Immigration Department. We have received information that you and your family may be illegally residing in the United States. We need you to come to our office tomorrow at 9 a.m. for clarification." Maya felt the blood freezing in her veins. Her family had arrived in the United States when she was only 8, and her parents had worked tirelessly to regularize everyone's situation. But immigration processes were complex, bureaucratic, and extremely expensive. "Is there a specific problem?" Maya asked, trying to keep her voice firm. "Let's just say that certain influential people expressed concerns about irregularities in their documentation. You better attend, Miss Santos, and bring your entire family." When Maya hung up the phone, her hands trembled. She knew exactly who had made that anonymous denunciation. Margaret Sterling and Victoria Kingston had connections at all levels of the government, and they had clearly decided that a young Philippine did not deserve the opportunity Richard was offering. The next day, while Maya faced hours of brutal interrogation at the immigration office, Margaret and Victoria were to have lunch at the exclusive yacht club, discreetly celebrating her victory. "Problem solved," said Margaret, gently cutting her grilled salmon. "The girl and her whole family will be deported within 2 weeks. Richard can look for someone else, suitable for their charity." Victoria smiled with malicious satisfaction. "SA, people like her need to learn that there are limits to their ambitions. We can't allow them to think they can simply skip their lines and take places that belong to established families." "What irritates me most," Margaret continued, "is this arrogance. The way she looked at us on that plane, as if it were our equal, as if I was entitled to be there." What Margaret and Victoria did not know was that Maya had grown in a family that valued more than anything the education and preparation for adversity. His grandmother, Rosa Santos, had been a teacher in the Philippines before emigrating, and had taught all grandchildren a fundamental lesson. When powerful people try to destroy you, it is because they recognize their potential and fear their ascension. That night, while Maya helped her younger brothers with the homework, knowing it could be one of the last times, she made a decision that would change everything. Instead of passively accepting injustice, she began to do something that her antagonists would never expect from a simple immigrant. Maya opened her laptop and began researching methodically on Margaret Sterling and Victoria Kingston. What she discovered in the first few minutes of investigation made her realize that those women had much more to hide than I imagined. Margaret Sterling, discovered Maya, had received millionaire government contracts for her consulting firm without ever participating in public tenders. Contracts were always signed after private dinners with government officials who coincidentally received donations to their political campaigns. Victoria Kingston was even more interesting. His family fortune, Maya discovered, had been built using practically slave work of illegal immigrants in their textile factories. Employees were threatened with deportation if they dared to complain of salaries below minimum, or unhealthy working conditions. But what really made Maya smile for the first time in days was finding that both Margaret and Victoria had been extremely careless with her digital communications. Text messages, emails, and even social media posts revealed a clear pattern of discrimination, political manipulation, and possible corruption. While Maya compilated this information methodically, organizing it in carefully labeled digital folders, she remembered her grandmother's words, "My dear, bad people always feel safe because they believe their victims are defenseless. They never imagine that the person who are trying to destroy can be smarter, more prepared, and more determined than them." Maya looked at the computer screen, where dozens of compromising documents were organized as pieces of a puzzle that was just starting to ride. Margaret and Victoria had made the mistake of underestimating not only their intelligence, but also their research ability and determination to protect their family. Each new humiliation, every threat of deportation, each attempt to make Maya feel inferior just fed a silent force that her antagonists couldn't see, an unshakable determination that grew exactly the moment they tried to break it. What those privileged women did not know was that every act of contempt was writing their own sentence of defeat, and that the young woman who had tried to destroy was preparing for retaliation that would completely redefine her luxury and privileged lives. Maya found that the immigration investigation had been only the first movement of Margaret and Victoria. In the following days, persecution intensified in ways that clearly demonstrated the power and cruelty of women used to destroying lives like who exchanges shoes. First came the connection to the school where Maya worked half-a-time tutor. "Miss Santos, unfortunately we received worrying information about her legal situation in the country," said the director, avoiding eye contact. "We can no longer keep employees with documentary irregularities. Your resignation is effective immediately." Maya knew exactly who had done those worrying information to get there. Margaret Sterling was on the foundation council that funded scholarships in that private school. Then it was his mother's turn, Elena, to lose her job as a cleaning lady at the Metropolitan Hospital. "I'm sorry, Elena," said the supervisor, clearly uncomfortable. "Orders from above. Something about antecedents checks that have not been approved." What hurt more deeply was to see how these women used their power as a weapon, destroying whole families without any remorse. For Margaret and Victoria, the Santos family was just an annoying obstacle that needed to be removed. "They think they can break us," said Maya to Sua Prima Carmen, while organizing the few belongings that would fit in the bags for a possible deportation, but they made a fundamental mistake. "What error?" Carmen asked, watching Maya opens her laptop again. "They assumed that I'm just a helpless victim. They never imagined that I could be much smarter and prepared than I appeared." During the following weeks, while officially looking for a job and tried to resolve immigration issues, Maya devoted her nights to something much more productive. She had found that Margaret Sterling had detailed correspondences about all her influence schemes in an email account that she naively believed to be safe. Maya's cousin Roberto worked as a IT technician at a company that provided services to various New Yorker high society organizations. Through him, Maya discovered something valuable. Margaret had a bad habit of using the same password for all her devices, the name of her pet dog, followed by the year of birth. "Maya, this is dangerous," warned Roberto when she explained what she intended to do. "If you find out that you accessed private information—" "Roberto," Maya interrupted calmly, "they are already trying to destroy our whole family. The question is not if I will defend myself, but how I will do it intelligently." What Maya found in Margaret's emails was even more shocking than he had imagined. Not only evidence of systematic discrimination against immigrants, but an elaborate corruption scheme involving fraudulent government contracts, tax evasion, and even blackmail against other members of the social elite. In an exchange of particularly revealing messages, Margaret wrote to Victoria, "The Philippine girl needs to disappear before Richard does something stupid as she really paid her studies. People like she can't have access to our social circle. Use their immigration contacts to speed up deportation." Victoria answered, "It's already resolved. My husband knows the judge who will analyze the case. In 2 weeks she will be on the first flight back to Manila. Richard will forget about her in a month." But the most devastating discovery came when Maya found evidence that Margaret had used illegal immigrant workers on her property in Hampton, paying under minimum wages and threatening them with deportation if they dare to complain. Worse still, when a worker had seriously injured, Margaret had simply fired him without medical care, forcing him to return to his home country with permanent sequelae. "These women are not just prejudiced," Maya said to her pink grandmother, showing the evidence she had compiled. "They are criminals who hide behind charities and charity dinners." Rosa Santos observed the documents with the wisdom of someone who had faced injustices for decades. "My dear, you're playing with fire. People with this kind of power can be very dangerous when they feel threatened. Grandma, Maya responded with a determination that made Rosa remember herself in her youth. They have threatened me with the worst they could do. Now it's my turn. Maya had learned something fundamental for years taking care of children. Timing was everything. Just as I knew exactly when applying pressure to calm a baby crying, she knew she needed to wait for the perfect time to use the information she had collected. This moment came when he found that Margaret Sterling would be honored at a televised charity dinner of the Social Integration Foundation. Such a bitter irony that almost made her laugh. Victoria Kingston would be one of the main speakers, talking about equal opportunities for all Americans. It's perfect, Maya murmured, looking at the digital invitation she had intercepted. Dinner would be next Saturday, at the Grand Ballroom of Plaza Hotel, with live broadcast to 3 television stations and streaming on major social networks. During the following week, Maya performed her final preparation with the accuracy of a surgeon. He created anonymous accounts on various platforms, organized evidence in easily digestible packages for journalists, and established contact with a lawyer specializing in reporting government corruption. On Friday before the event, Maya received a call that almost made her give up everything. It was from the immigration department stating that his deportation hearing had been scheduled for the following Monday. They accelerated the process, Carmen explained, hugging Maya as she processed the news. You want you outside the country before you can cause any problem. Maya looked out the window of the apartment in Queens, watching the Manhattan lights shine in the distance. For a moment he felt the weight of all accumulated injustices, all the humilia, all attempts to make your family feel inferior and unwanted. Then he remembered the words of his great-grandmother, transmitted through generations of strong women. My dear, when powerful people try to destroy you, it is because you recognize that you have the power to destroy them as well. Maya smiled for the first time in weeks. Margaret Sterling and Victoria Kingston were right to be afraid of her. They just didn't know how much they should be terrified. The following Saturday, while preparing for what would be the most important night of her life, Maya made one last check in all her systems. The evidence was organized, the confirmed journalistic contacts, and the timing calculated to the second. What those privileged women would discover in a few hours was that the young immigrant who had tried to silence was not only smarter than they thought, she was a force of nature that was about to rewrite the rules of the game they thought completely controlled. That's when Maya received a text message that made her realize that her revenge would be even sweeter than she had planned. Richard Blackstone had discovered about the persecution that Margaret and Victoria were moving against her, and her answer would be the final catalyst that would transform the humiliation of these women into something truly epic. Plaza Hotel's great ballroom had never witnessed a moment like that. Margaret Sterling had just taken the stage to receive his honor from the Foundation for Social Integration, when the event's giant screens began to display something that made the blood of all gifts freeze in the veins. My dear guests, said Maya Santos, her voice echoing through the speakers as she walked calmly through the central hall of the salon, wearing an elegant navy dress that Richard Blackstone had insisted on buying for her. Allow me to share some fascinating information about our honoree tonight. The screens began to show off conversation prints between Margaret and Victoria, with the words, "The Philippine girl needs to disappear before Richard does something stupid," highlighted in bottle letters. The social elite audience was absolutely silent, absorbing each poisonous word that they had exchanged on Maya and their family. Margaret Sterling tried to interrupt, shouting for the technicians to turn off the screens, but Maya had prepared everything carefully. Each system was being remotely controlled by Cousin Roberto, who had infiltrated the event's technical team. But wait, more, continued Maya, her quiet voice contrasting with the growing panic on the stage. Did you know that our dear Margaret Sterling used illegal immigrant workers on your Hampton property, paying $2 per hour and threatening them with deportation? Screens now displayed clandestine workers' photos, counterfeit payment records, and even audio recordings where Margaret instructed their foreman to keep Mexicans on the line, with threats to report them to immigration. Victoria Kingston, who was in the front row, tried to get up discreetly to leave, but Maya mentioned her directly. And our estimated Victoria Kingston, who will talk about equal opportunities, would you like to explain how your textile company systematically violates labor laws? The documents that appeared on the screens were devastating. Internal reports of the company of Victoria showed knowledge of unhealthy conditions, under the minimum wages, and even cases of sexual harassment that were drowned out with deportation threats. Stop it, Margaret shouted, his voice cracking with despair. This girl is lying. She has invaded our private information. Maya smiled calmly. Private information? How did you use to pursue my family? How did you make the calls to destroy our jobs? How did you have the influence to accelerate our deportation? It was then that Richard Blackstone got up from the main table, holding Emma on her lap and walking to the stage. "Maya, can I talk?" The businessman took the microphone with an expression that the gifts had never seen before, a mixture of controlled anger and absolute determination. "Ladies and gentlemen, I found this week that two people who considered friends were systematically chasing the family of the young woman who saved my daughter of hours of suffering." Richard looked straight at Margaret and Victoria. "You used your contacts to try to destroy an innocent family simply because a brilliant teenager showed compassion when I needed it most." The screens now displayed something even more shocking. Bank records showing that Margaret had paid bribes to immigration officials to speed up the Santos family deportation process. Values, dates, transfers, everything was deoccupied with surgical accuracy. "How did you get it?" Victoria asked, her almost inaudible voice, knowing that her political and social career had ended at that time. Maya walked to the stage, her posture radiating a confidence that made the whole hall realize that they were witnessing something historical. "You have underestimated two key things about me. First, that I am much smarter than I appeared. Second, that when you threaten my family, I get relentless. For weeks, I watched them meticulously destroying our lives, using their power as a weapon against people who never hurt anyone. You have documented each cruel movement in emails, text messages, even automatically recorded telephone conversations for your own security systems." Margaret Sterling, realizing the extent of his exhibition, tried a last desperate card. "This is illegal. She has violated our privacy. I will sue it." Maya laughed softly. "Margaret, do you really want to draw the authorities' attention now? Because I have here," she raised a sealed envelope, "evidence of tax evasion that totals $2 million in unpaid taxes. Do you want me to deliver it directly to the FBI tomorrow?" The silence that followed was broken only by the clicks of the cameras of the journalists, who documented every second of the public humiliation of the two most powerful women of the New York elite. Victoria Kingston, trying a last play, pointed out accustomedly to Maya, "Are you seeing this? She threatens us, blackmails us. It proves exactly the kind of person she is." "The kind of person I am," said Maya calmly, "is someone who protects your family. The kind of person you are became very clear to everyone here tonight." Richard took the microphone again. "Maya Santos will start her studies at Harvard next semester, with a full scholarship from the Blackstone Foundation, and I will be proud to be your mentor throughout your academic journey." The applause that echoed through the hall were deafening. Members of the social elite, who seconds before they looked at Maya with contempt, now applauded her standing, recognizing not only her intelligence but her ability to face injustice with strategy and dignity. Margaret Sterling and Victoria Kingston left the hall amid embarrassing silence, knowing that their reputations, their social circles, and their political influences had been unrecoverably destroyed in one night. While the camera's flashes captured Maya alongside Richard and Emma, a question hovered in the air. How had a 16-year-old managed to orchestrate the fall of two of New York's most powerful women with precision that even the best lawyers in the city could match? 6 months after the event known as the Night of Truth at Plaza Hotel, Maya Santos walked through the halls of Harvard University with the same serenity that had shone on that plane. But now their footprints echoed by halls where only the most brilliant students in the world had the privilege of studying. "Maya, 3 more internship offers arrived," said his dormitory colleague Jennifer, handing him a pile of letters. "Goldman Sachs, McKinsey, and, wow, even the Justice Department is interested in his work on government corruption." Maya smiled softly, remembering how Margaret Sterling had moved in her academic pretensions just a few months earlier. Now the same institutions these women considered their exclusive territory were competing to have Maya in their teams. Margaret and Victoria's fall had been more devastating than any cinematic revenge could imagine. The evidence that Maya had collected resulted in federal investigations that discovered decades of corruption, tax evasion, and labor exploitation. Margaret Sterling lost all government contracts, was prosecuted by 3 different federal agencies, and saw his consulting firm collapse in a matter of weeks. Her mansion in Hampton was confiscated to pay fines, and she now lived in a modest apartment in Queens, ironically in the same neighborhood where Maya had grown. Victoria Kingston had an even bitter destination. Her textile company was closed by the Labor Department. She faced criminal accusations for exploiting immigrant workers, and her political influence evaporated overnight as politicians ran to distance themselves from her toxic name. "The funniest," Maya told Richard during one of her weekly conversations while Emma played on her lap, "it's just not realizing that I never wanted to destroy them. I just wanted to protect my family." Richard shook his head with admiration. "Maya, you did much more than protecting yourself. You exposed an entire system of corruption that was damaging hundreds of immigrant families. The public exposure had generated a wave of reforms. The immigration department implemented new protocols to avoid political influence in individual cases. 3 judges were investigated for accepting suspicious donations, and a new federal law has been passed, nicknamed Maya Santos Law, protecting retaliation complaints in cases of discrimination. Most importantly, Maya had established a foundation using part of the money recovered from the fines imposed on Margaret and Victoria. The foundation Bisavo Rosa offered free legal assistance to immigrant families facing unfair deportation. "Do you know what impresses me most about you?" asked Professor Williams during a class about social justice. "You could have become bitter, vindictive, focused only on destroying who harmed you. Instead, you channeled this energy to build something bigger." Maya thought of the words of her great-grandmother, transmitted through generations. "True strength is not in defeating your enemies, but in becoming so successful that they become irrelevant." In an irony that has not gone unnoticed by anyone, Margaret Sterling now worked as an administrative assistant in an NGO that helped immigrants, the only job he could find after his reputation was destroyed. Every day she processed requests for help from families just like the Santos family. Victoria Kingston, in turn, faced criminal trial and had lost her own children when evidence of negligence came to light during the investigations. Her life of privileges had completely collapsed, and she now understood on her skin what meant to be vulnerable in a system that offers no chance for those who have no power. "They still send me letters," Maya revealed to her cousin Carmen during a call, asking for forgiveness, wanting to explain that they were not intended to be cruel. "And you answer?" asked Carmen. "Never," said Maya calmly. "Not because I hate them, but because some lessons can only be learned in the solitude of one's own failure." Emma, now over a year old, had become a cheerful and healthy child who clearly preferred Maya to any professional nanny Richard tried to hire. During Maya's visits, Emma ran to her arms with the same confidence she had shown on that flight so long ago. She recognizes genuine people, Richard always watched, just as I should have recognized from the beginning. At the end of his first year at Harvard, Maya received an Academic Excellence Award and a research scholarship to develop artificial intelligence algorithms aimed at detecting systemic discrimination in legal and corporate processes. "It's funny how the circle closes," she said to her grandmother Rosa during the award ceremony. "They have tried to stop me from studying, and now I'm developing technology that can prevent other people from going through what we've been through." Rosa Santos, now 78, watched her granddaughter receive honors alongside some of the most brilliant students in the world. "My dear," she whispered, "your great-grandmother would be proud. You not only survived the storm, you became the hurricane." In the audience, Richard Blackstone applauded Emma on her lap, knowing that her decision to support Maya had been not only morally correct, but also the best business decision of her career. The technology Maya was developing would become the basis of a new division of black tech industries, focused on social justice and corporate equality. Margaret Sterling and Victoria Kingston had tried to prevent a brilliant young immigrant from having access to the opportunities they considered exclusively their own. Instead, they ended up creating a force of nature that rewritten the rules of the game forever. The best revenge, Maya learned, was not to destroy who tried to harm her, was to build something so extraordinary that she made her attacks completely irrelevant. It had turned discrimination into determination, humiliation into strength, and prejudice in purpose. And as he walked through the Harvard campus that spring afternoon, carrying civil rights books and system theory, Maya smiled as she had started that everything started with a simple decision to help a baby crying on a plane. Sometimes the most important moments of our lives begin with the simplest gestures of compassion, and sometimes the person you help is not the only one that ends up being saved. If this story of overcoming injustice has touched your heart, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that true victory is not in defeating your enemies, but in becoming someone they could never imagine being.